everybody, welcome to Gootz's Disney Pod. I'm your host, Ray Gootz. Thank you so much for being here today. This week we are covering The Incredibles, and joining me is one of my, I wouldn't say oldest, but I've known you for quite a while, Mike Lawrence. Mike, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about this movie. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really, I rewatched it last night to get ready for the podcast, and there's a lot to cover with the movie, but I want to talk about you for a minute. Mike,
Yeah.
when did you start doing stand-up? How long has it been?
I celebrated 15 years a couple weeks ago. November 5th, 2005 was my first day doing stand-up.
Oh, wow. Okay. And have you done much stand-up this year?
No. For me, I just don't like doing the Zoom stuff, and I'm in LA, so there isn't as many outdoor shows, and also like they just shut down restaurants again.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
saw that.
dangerous, and yeah, I'm staying. My mother-in-law's here, and she's like, compromised and things like that. So just being safe, and I am too. I have Crohn's, so it's like I
Oh,
shouldn't get it
wow.
either.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I've been writing, making money that way, but yeah, not doing much stand-up. It's not worth risking my life, I guess.
Yeah, I hadn't been doing much stand-up, and then I started doing a show in my backyard for like 10 people, which was nice. And then
Nice.
they changed it where you can't have 10 people in your backyard, so I stopped doing it again, and I'm just like, I'm not gonna go do any indoor shows either. I don't want to risk my health, or anything like that. So
Yeah, it's just my big thing with it is it's not even just about me. It's that like I feel like in stand up you want the audience to be comfortable, and I don't know
hmm
how comfortable they can be. It's like you have these drive-in shows, and I think those are great for big headliners that can draw that size of audience, but like when you're still just a comic that they're just paying to see comedy, they don't know who you are. It's like I don't think I'm worth risking your life for.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
what
my jokes, but I don't think they're that good.
I've tried to tell that to people, and people were like still like doing shows like Grizzly Pear and LOL right now indoors, and I'm like, guys, you're not going to become famous this year. Like, you can take this year off and just do other things,
Yeah, you could be infamous.
Yes,
You
you
could be the
could.
next super spreader event.
Yeah, you could get arrested and stuff. Like, they had a swinger party 3 blocks from my house. They all got arrested. So you could be that guy, but you're not going to become like, the new Kevin Hart's not going to make it during the pandemic. That's why I try
You're
to tell
like the world needs laughter. No, it needs more hospital beds.
it needs more pandemic relief. It doesn't need left.
Yeah, it needs a vaccine.
Yeah, it's always the guy also charging a cover and a 2 drink minimum that says that.
Yeah,
It's
laughter
like,
is the best medicine until people get it and come home and are still sick and die.
Mike, what got you into stand up? What made you want to do it?
My mom was a comic in the
Hmm.
80s and 90s, and so that was like I often say that's made me not wanna just because I saw the realism of it. Like there was nothing glamorous about it. It just was a business and that kind of thing. But I did slam poetry, which is really embarrassing, and I realized I was just getting funnier and funnier and going for laughs more and more. I was always getting at laughs, but I was starting to get with laughs as well doing poetry. And I was just like, you know what? I think I want to just do comedy. Like, what the hell? And I talked to my mom, and it was a great conversation. She's like, yeah, just do it. You can do it. And
Hmm.
I've been doing it.
Yeah, you've been pretty successful. You've been on the roast battles with Jeff Ross, and
Yeah.
you've been in a couple of sketches. The Triple H sketch. Remember, you were in that one. Do you remember that? Yeah. Okay, you remember the
Oh,
Triple H.
yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and yeah, you've been doing really good. When did you move to New York?
I moved to New York in 2007 at the
Hmm.
beginning of January. So I'd only been doing stand up like a year and 2 months because I mean, basically New York you have to start over anyways. So
Hmm.
when you see this, I didn't want to get all these habits that weren't gonna translate. It's
Hmm.
like if I'm gonna have to start over anyways, I might as well. So I mean, and I talked to my parents, and their thing was just graduate college, like get your degree. So I was gonna be a teacher,
Wow.
teaching
Oh, I was gonna
English.
do that too, actually, before
Yeah,
I went all in on this. Yes, that was my thing too.
yeah. So then I just ended up, getting my English degree because I just had enough credits already. I just needed the teaching credits, And so I came to New York with, 7 years of experience at McDonald's and a English degree. And yeah, suffice it to say, I barely made any money my first few years. Really hard.
Yeah, it's a hard grind. The first time I ever saw you, I had just went to the bootleg DVD store, and I think I bought Jason the Wheeled Warrior season 1. And then I went to go do Khalees Hawkins' show at the Lantern. And the first time I saw you was also the first time I ever saw Michael Che.
Oh
I met
wow.
both of you on the same day, and you were doing a bit about Batman. It was one of your. Do you remember your early Batman bit?
I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You were doing that bit, and I thought, oh, that guy's he has similar tastes like me. As I'm perusing the episode guide of Jason the Wheeled Warriors, which I was going to watch after the show.
What is that, Jason the what Warriors?
Jason the Wheeled Warriors. It was an obscure '80s. I used to collect all the '80s cartoon series, and that one I would. When they put out obscure ones, I would run to the DVD store and buy them. And I was like, oh my god, $30! This is a steal. And now I look back, like I spent $30 on Jason the Wheeled Warriors. Like, what the fuck?
I've never heard of that one. That's a blind spot for me.
It's a really obscure one. I think it's an anime that they translated. I'm not sure, but it's very obscure. It's not very good.
Yeah.
As soon as I got home, I'm like, oh, there's a reason why me and my friends didn't watch this. So, yeah. What were you into when you were a kid? I know you're big into comic books, but what cartoons were you into? Were you into Disney a lot?
I was big into the Disney afternoon stuff. So I mean, I've just been playing the games again. They have that NES collection on like the PS4. So like, I mean, the DuckTales Capcom game is like really important to me.
Oh, I love that. Love that game.
Yeah, and then I had Chippendale, and then I mean, the show that I really love that I've started listening to a podcast about, and I've been rewatching all the episodes for the first time in years is Darkwing Duck.
I love that. Yes.
I'm 30. I'm about to turn 38, so I was about 8 years old when it came out, which was like the perfect age. And it's kind of amazing because in '91 you get Darkwing Duck, and then a year later you get the Batman animated series. So Darkwing Duck is kind of like the starter kit because I remember they did like 2 seasons of Darkwing Duck, and when it came back in like September of '92. When Batman was also on, I'm like, hey, sorry, man, I'm with this guy now.
There's a podcast about Darkwing Duck.
Yes.
Oh, do comedians do it, or do people that work on the show?
No, they're just nerds.
Nerds. Oh man, that's wild.
It's all right. Yeah.
The 90s were like an amazing time for TV animation. Like, I read a review on Animaniacs where like some woman was shitting on 90s animation, and I'm like, literally every show. You had The Simpsons at its best. You had the Batman. You had Animaniacs. You had Tiny Toons. You had the stuff on Nickelodeon, which they've never really recaptured. Rocko's Modern Life. Rugrats.
Yeah, Rugrats. Like early Rugrats is good. Doug is good. Doug is very good.
Doug is amazing. And like you had all this quality hitting you like 5 days a week, and I don't think they've ever really recaptured that much quality ever again. There are some good shows now, but they're not as frequent as I feel like the 90s were.
Yeah, because the part of the problem is that people will just like focus on not a Jason the Wheeled Warriors, but like but you also had Biker Mice from Mars and Street Sharks, and I'm like, yeah, but you also had all this, and I mean, like I'm a big fan. Like I like the X-Men cartoon, and I like the Spider-Man cartoon. The second season of Fantastic Four is amazing.
So is the second season of Iron Man. Those 2 shows got overhauls, and they didn't tell anybody. Yeah.
They didn't tell the fans.
No.
Because you just watch, and I remember it was on at like, I'm from South Florida. It was on at like 7 a.m.
That's when it was on here, yeah. They made it very hard.
On like the WB station, and so I had to wake up early, and I remember like I watched one episode, which was like it was based on when Doom got Silver Surfer's powers, I think in issues like 55 to 60 of the original FF. And I didn't realize that's the finale of that show. But it was just a random episode that I saw.
Yeah, that was really. There was also a Black Panther episode in the second season that was.
With Keith David as Black Panther.
Yes, and yes, and then there was the Iron Man episode had one where they basically copied Inner Space, where they had to go. Either Iron Man had to go inside Hawkeye's body, or Hawkeye had to go inside Iron Man's body. That was a good
Yeah.
episode. Yeah, there was like the second season of those shows were really, really good, and they didn't tell anyone because the first seasons are abominations. Wizard Magazine made it very clear how much they hated those first seasons.
Yeah, and I think the first episode I saw of the Fantastic Four was the Mole Man episode, and I know that's like episode 11 or whatever of the first season, and it had like Brian Austin Green as Human Torch in that first season, and he sings a song called "Flame On." It's so
Yes,
bad.
he did like a rap. And I remember he said in
Yeah.
Wizard Magazine he wrote the rap. He asked if he could write a rap, and the producers were
Yeah.
like, "Sure."
And
Yeah.
and the rap is literally flame on and on and on, and then the Thing has a song too. It's like, what time is it? It's clobbering time. It's so, I mean, and the animation was bad, and the thing that they did, and I get like a pet peeve of mine in cartoons, and I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way, is sometimes when, because of budgets, right? Like any actor can do up to like 3 or 4 characters before they have to pay them more.
Yeah.
And sometimes like that, that works out. Sometimes you get like, Dan Castellaneta, Harry Shearer, and Hank Azaria.
Yeah.
But sometimes like, like even like old, like I'm a big, like Justice League fan and all that. But there are times when you hear the voice of one of the main stars and they're just doing like a bit part, and it just takes you out of it. Like, like a very notable example is the first line in Batman the Animated Series on Leather Wings. Like the first person that talks, it's just a pilot that's voiced by Kevin Conroy.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
That
Rough,
one's not that bad, but what they did on the first season of Fantastic Four was the guy who played Doctor Doom was also the guy who played Reed Richards. But Doctor Doom was just Reed Richards with like a bad, European. I want to like suck your blood. Like it's basically like the guy's doing the count. And so he's talking to Reed. It's just a guy in a booth, and and it does not work. And then in the second season, they got this guy Simon Templeman, who in the video games, PS1 game Legacy of Kain, he's like this vampire, and he's awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, that
because it's like classic British voice, and it just works so much better. But it's hard for me to listen to Doctor Doom in that first season, and he's animated terribly.
Yeah, he really is. They really no one has really been able to get a good handle on Doctor Doom, both in the movies and the cartoon. I feel like you would think he's the easiest person to translate, but he's been very hard to translate. I think he either comes across as too goofy, or they just like in the movies they just abandon everything that makes him Doctor Doom.
Well, I think that the second season, I think, is the best. The second season of the '94 FF is the best version of him. I think the problem with Doctor Doom is that, he is like 1960s Kirby and Lee at the peak of their powers, and he is the best of both of those guys. I mean, because the thing with Doctor Doom is he's like 10 ideas. And they're all great ideas, but the only way they work is if you keep all of them, and if you take one of them out, the whole thing falls apart. So he needs to be a king. He needs to be a sorcerer. He needs to be Reed's roommate. Like, there's all these things.
He needs to be a genius.
Yeah, he needs to be arrogant, and like. There was like that one reveal where like he takes the mask off and his face isn't even that scarred. It's just his own vanity sees like this, indignity that was done to him, and that's why he's so mad. I mean, because it's like when you read Fantastic Four Annual 2, which is like the origin, and it's one of the best 60s Marvel comics. It goes all over the place, he's this son of these like wanderers, like these Eastern European wanderers, and his mom dies and his dad dies later, and then he is almost like he makes a bunch of like inventions that fall apart. He's kind of a con artist, and then the fact that he's like he's the dick roommate, like, but to its extremes.
Yes, yeah, where he becomes like an evil despot to spite Reed Richards. Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
and all of this stuff, but that he has to, there's like one of the best best stories with him is called Triumph and Torment, and
Mhm.
it's you read this, it's Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange.
Yes, that's one of my favorite. Where they go to get the mom.
Yeah, they had to get
Yeah.
them the freedom of their soul
Mhm.
because he is the second in Doom is second in command of Sorcerer Supreme, and
Mhm.
like the first in command has to grant a wish to the second in command, and
Mhm.
his wish is to save his mother's soul. And
Mhm.
so yeah, it's because like then that's the humanity. But it's like if you don't have that part, then this guy is he's not just an asshole.
Yeah, I think if they put him in the MCU, the mom thing, I think they got to go for the mom thing, and
They do.
they also I think this actually helped the character. I think Trump helped the character because the most unbelievable thing about that character was his people loved him while he's Doctor Doom and trying to blow up the world, and I'm like, nobody would love this guy. He's a piece of shit. But Trump is actually a bigger piece of shit than Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
And people in our country who I thought had half a brain are willing to die for him. So I'm like, you know what? I think Doctor Doom could work now.
And you got to think too, when they came up with him, that was like, around the time of Castro and things like that. And you obviously have a lot of deflectors, but there are people who are loyal to these, rulers. So
Yeah,
it's
no,
it's a complicated thing, but they just handle it simply, and then it doesn't work. I mean, the Julian McMahon 2005, Fantastic Four,
oh,
where he also like that's the thing too. He shouldn't have powers. It's I know we're gonna
mhm,
get into this with Syndrome, but
mhm.
they're because it is you can't not talk about the Fantastic Four and Doom.
Yes,
I
yeah,
mean, you can't talk about the Incredibles without talking about
yeah,
Fantastic Four and
exactly,
Doom.
exactly.
But like, that's a part of the character. I don't have powers, and I can beat you.
I have to cheat or create inventions or have a robot duplicates, and he has to constantly be trying to outwit everybody in order to
Hmm.
win. And then when he does get powers, he always kind of fucks it up, which was Secret Wars and the 2015 Secret Wars.
Yeah.
When he creates Battle World and Black Panther gets the Infinity Gauntlet, which I was surprised they never gave the Panther the gauntlet like they did in the book. I don't know if did you read the 2015 Secret
I
Wars?
did not.
Okay, there's a moment where T'Challa gets the Infinity Gauntlet and Thanos gives this big speech about what an idiot he is and he can't handle that. And I think Black Panther just does the snap and he basically that's what's the word disembowels Thanos with a thought and then
Oh
just
wow.
moves on. Yeah, he's like basically like shut the fuck up, dude. Like I'm a king. I know what the fuck I'm doing. I thought it was really cool. I'm surprised you never read that story. It's pretty good. Do you like Jonathan Hickman or are you just like whatever?
I'm up and down with him.
Mm-hmm.
I like him. I don't love him. I think he's like almost too wordy at times. Like I think he overthinks things too much. Like it's a lot of like good ideas, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's not. They're not. The stories aren't fun enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he has
You
like
know.
90 good ideas and he just presents them and then doesn't go enough places with them. You know.
Yeah, like I tried reading. I know everyone's like this X-Men run is like the best run ever, and I'm reading it and it's fine, but like I kind of miss like the Claremont characterization. Like
Yes.
that Whedon took up
Mm-hmm.
in his run. Like it to me, it's ultimately about these kids.
I do think there's going to be a massive twist because the characters are so out of character that they're not. None of those people are reading. None of the people in the book that are in the book right now are actually the real X Men. There's someone else because they're so alien and weird, and they're all acting so out of character that it's almost like I don't. There's going to be some giant twist here that someone's
Yeah.
behind this. Yeah, I thought I saw something in Excalibur. I thought he could pull because he does do that. He pulls like random issues. He'll take a thread and do that. I forget what it was, but I've been rereading all the X Men comics from the '80s during the quarantine, and that has
Oh
just been
wow.
amazing. Yeah, I've been reading all the New Mutants, and it made me like enjoy the movie a lot more because I think if you didn't read New Mutants, you would have been lost in that movie.
I saw that movie.
Mhm.
I saw it in a drive-in. It's the one like movie I've seen this summer
Yeah,
that
hmm
outside,
I
and
went to the drive-in too. Yeah, for that. Yeah.
it was I mean, I think whatever I saw, just being out of the house, I was gonna like.
hmm
There's good moments in it. I mean, the thing is, it's like we're adults and we're watching this and they're like, they made this for kids, but it's like these are characters that we fell in love with when we were kids.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true.
So
I didn't think
yeah,
it was that bad. People were going on. It's the worst Marvel movie. I was like, it's fine. It's not
no,
the
it ain't even
worst.
close to that.
No, but you're right. I do think watching it, I had the stars. I went to upstate New York and I had the stars in the sky, like, behind the screen. I think that added a lot to the movie.
Yeah, and I think I actually think watching it in the car was better in a way because
Yeah,
it's
I
like
agree.
if there is one big complaint I have about it, the movie is so claustrophobic.
Hmm.
Like they don't go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I think they kept losing the budget. So the guy basically is like, all right, the New Mutants are going to, like, basically stay in the hospital for 90 minutes. And the minute they leave, the movie ends.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, it's like it was like sad and mopey, but a lot of those '80s comics are fucking sad and mopey.
Yeah. Yeah, the New Mutants didn't have that many positive issues. They tried to go out and be happy, but like Magique would get like that Magique storyline, by the way, with shit, I forget the demons. Belasco, the demon.
Yeah, I
That
think
is
so.
creepy as fuck. It's basically like a grooming story in hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really creepy story. But she's one of my favorite characters. I liked her a lot reading her in the '80s. I never really read those comics, so.
Yeah, I kind of wish they'd connected like her and like the Deadpool version of Colossus and stuff. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I think like you said, they limited the budget, and I think they limited the references and the interconnectivity. Like, no, you're your own thing now.
Well,
I mean, I
did
was
you
gonna
know?
say like if I had a big criticism of the movie is that it
Mhm.
felt more like a TV pilot than a movie.
Yes. Well, he had an after credit sequence and he cut it and he said like there's not going to be a sequel, so I told him just to cut the after credit sequence. So, I think he was
And
setting up a lot of shit though.
and that was gonna be John Hamm as Mr. Sinister or something, right? At
Yeah, and
six and all that.
I think he wanted to bring in Magnus and Warlock too from outer space
Okay.
in the sequel. So like that, which would have been interesting. Warlock, I used to love his design as a little kid. And now reading him, I'm like, yeah, he's a little bit too much like Scrappy. I don't know. He's a little bit too much like the wacky sidekick.
Yeah.
He's
Snarf,
not.
snarf.
Yeah, he's that. He's basically that in comic book form, and they're like having him talk in 0-1s. I don't know. It's weird. Let's get to the main event. Let's get to Incredibles. Mike, you're a huge Pixar fan. I know that from reading your Facebook status. You always go see Pixar films in theaters, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you see this when it first came out?
Oh yeah, I have a fun story about this one,
Oh,
man.
cool. Let's do it.
Yeah. So this was November 2004,
Yep.
and I was in college still. I was dating a guy.
Oh,
I
wow.
was
Okay.
Yeah, and this was like our second date,
Mm-hmm.
and the big issue was that I wanted to watch the movie and he wanted to make out, and it was one of those things where it was like I was just finding out who I was,
Mm-hmm.
what my own sexuality was and all of that,
Yeah.
and but what I definitely was certain of was I want to watch The Incredibles. That's one thing I knew about myself. And I remember, and us having a talk afterwards, and he was like, "Are you just not into me?" I'm like, "Dude, it's Brad Bird doing a Fantastic Four." It was like, I said, I'm like, dude, I thought one of the reasons you date guys is that they'd also like The Incredibles.
Yeah. They shut up when a superhero movie starts. They're not like, what
Yeah.
is this? Who is that? What is this? Yeah, no, that's true. Oh my
And
and
I think it's
did that
important.
cause
Oh,
the
is it
rift?
wrong?
Did that cause the rift between you guys?
Oh, it did. Yeah. I mean, we ended up breaking up a few weeks later, anyways.
Okay.
It just wasn't gonna work out. And that was a big reason. Like when we were fighting at the end, I was like, "You didn't let me see The Incredibles." That's And what I was gonna say was, I think that in talking about this movie, what's really important to stress and address is this is 2004,
Mhm.
and you got to look at all the comic book and superhero movies and stories that came before this. So this really stuck out.
It did, and also you also have to put in the context of animated films because Pixar really didn't tackle human beings until this
No.
movie. And also, there wasn't really animated films this long. Like, I always forget, this movie is almost 2 hours long,
Yeah.
which doesn't happen. And yeah, you have to, so you kind of, this is before Batman Begins. This is before stuff like Coco and what's another movie where humans are a big part? Frozen and stuff. So this is pre all that. This is pre Iron Man. This is pre a lot of like revolutionary superhero films. And this kind of really sets the tone. I think like in the early 2000s, this, if you just compare everything pre-Batman Begins, like the first 5 years of the early 2000s were super movies, this has stood the test of time, whereas stuff like X-Men or X2 or Spider-Man 2 don't hold up anymore.
Yeah, I think that this is the same year as Spider-Man 2, right?
Yeah, it
Spider-Man
is.
2 comes out in the summer. This comes out in the winter. Yeah, I think that some of the Aunt May stuff doesn't hold up at all.
The stuff with the landlord's daughter doesn't hold up.
No, the Nickelback, Chad Kroeger and Josie Scott hero song from the first.
Well, no, Dashboard Confessional was part 2. They were part 1. I had the soundtracks because I bought them.
Yeah, no, I know. I said, yeah, but that doesn't hold up. Blade, the first Blade holds up pretty well. And
Blade 2 holds up really well, but I feel like that's more like an action horror film than a superhero film.
Yeah, but I don't think we get as much Marvel. I don't think it gets enough credit for kickstarting the Marvel stuff as it deserves, because they saw the money they could make from that and were like, okay, we haven't even released our big guns yet. So I do think Blade's really important. We had Daredevil. I'm just trying to think of the movies we had.
Daredevil.
We had Daredevil. Hulk. Yeah, Ang Lee Hulk. The 90s are so weird, where it was like Barbed Wire and Judge Dredd and Tank Girl. It was like all this weird, and The Shadow and The Phantom, where it was like just really old movie executives. You know what superheroes I liked? Dick Tracy.
Let's update the Rocket. Well, no, the Rocketeer was original character. I shouldn't shit on him. That was an original idea, or that which recently came out. That was like a retro idea. But yeah, The Shadow, The Phantom. I don't even know anyone who likes The Phantom. I haven't met any old people who grew up on The Phantom. I think like 4 guys in like the Midwest like The Phantom. I don't know anyone. Have you ever met anyone who actually likes The Phantom?
I don't know anyone who likes the old Phantom stories. And then
I like Defenders of the Earth. That was my thing.
I know people that like the campiness of the 95 movie. And I remember a show, Phantom 2040, where it was like the Phantom in the future. And the video game is pretty good, but like I barely watched the cartoon.
Yeah. No, that's true. The Phantom, I'll tell you a good story about the Phantom. Me and my dad went to the $2 theater. There was a $2 theater in Manhattan back then. We saw the Phantom, and then I hated it. He hated it. He liked it because it reminded him of when he was a kid. And then we snuck into Fargo, and the day was saved because that was just tremendous.
That happened with me and a friend. We saw the 2003 Daredevil, and then we snuck into Chicago.
Oh, okay. You were like, okay, this is a much better way.
This is fun. Yeah.
Yeah. That happened to me too with Congo and we the same thing. I saw Congo, and then we snuck into Die Hard with a Vengeance, and then because Congo, we were like all hyped for Congo, and Congo is not. I suppose it has campy value now. I haven't seen it in years, but
I remember that. Yeah, I saw me, my mom, and my brother. Me and my mom went to see Naked Gun 2.5, and my brother went to see T2.
Okay.
And Naked Gun 2.5 ended like 45 minutes early. It's just a shorter movie. And I think it started a little earlier too. So my mom, we were waiting in the lobby, and she's like, I guess we might as well just meet up with your brother. And it blew my mind. I was like, I was 91. I was 8 years old. Like in T1000, like, and those effects still look better than some modern effects.
Oh yeah, that's that movie was so good, it almost broke that series because there was nowhere to go after that. It's like that's it. That's the ending. You can't, and they keep trying to like bring it back, and it's like, no, guys, that was it.
Yeah, it's the same. It's literally the same thing with Aliens. All right, the first one's great. Oh, the second one, James Cameron pulls out all the stops. I know he did both Terminators and only the second Aliens, not the first. So, but then the third one of both of those, it's like they're just not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you already had the ending, and now you just keep going, and you're not building on the ending, which I think is so, like, the thing with Pixar is every time Pixar announces a sequel, I'm like, where are they going to go? And they never discount the ending. They never go like, actually, Andy didn't like his toys, and here's Toy Story 3. The great thing about Pixar is they constantly, even the Cars movies, which I'm not a fan of, but they always build upon that ending, and it's a natural progression, which a lot of movies don't. They have to do a sequel, and then they just negate the ending of the last movie, you know?
Well, and I'll say, to talk about the second one, and which allows me to go into this one is that, in a lot of ways, The Incredibles are more like spy films, like Bond films, than superhero films. And I think that this one is more superhero-y, and I think the second one really doubles down as like, all the Elastigirl solo stuff and the Screenslaver feels more like spy stuff, and
Yes.
Edna Mode feels like Q, and she's in both, but it's like I definitely think Brad Bird is like, all right, what are the two things I love from the 60s? Spy stuff and superheroes. And he melds both of them. I think this one does a better job of keeping the superhero stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's also like a love of like the family sitcoms of the 60s, but updating it to more modern sensibilities. It does kind of feel like, you're right, it does kind of feel like everything this guy grew up on, he's smashing into one movie, and it really works. It really like stands out. This is, it almost feels to me like this is not even a kid's movie when you rewatch the first Incredibles. It feels very adult because there's a lot of death. Like they kill off all the other heroes. I mean, when he discovers, I forget what they called the character, but he looked like Cyclops. When he discovers the corpse in the waterfall, that's like, holy shit. They never kill anyone. There's like that montage of all the heroes getting killed by their capes, which was pretty good. And then there's, the main plot kicks off with he saves a guy from killing himself, and the guy sues him because he's like, I don't want to live. So like their suicide is a jumping off point for this whole story.
Yeah, and I think that like, a big thing with this movie that really helped was that like, Pixar had been around. The first movie was 95. This is 04. This is like one of the first where it really feels like, an outsider. Brad Bird, who I don't think worked on the other Pixar stuff. He did The Iron Giant, which is a fantastic movie.
I think he just consulted on them. Like, he'd be like, what do you think of this? And he'd be like, this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know he worked on a lot of Simpsons stuff, so that's awesome. But he's a guy, like, he brought his best sensibilities with the, like, the Pixar house style, as it were. Like you were saying, I don't think, like, maybe a Lasseter or someone in-house that worked on all of these would have said, hey, maybe we should do a humans-based movie. You need like this outsider guy to come in and be like, no, And the big thing about Pixar, the underlying theme of at least a lot of their earlier films, is like the world under the world, right?
Yeah.
And that's Toy Story, that's Monsters Inc. That's a lot of these. It's like, that's part of why I don't like Cars. Cars is like, fuck it, man. The humans are dead. There's one world.
Cars is creepy as hell.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Those movies to me are horror films. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they are, and for many reasons. And then you have like, Finding Nemo is another one where the fish talk about the humans. A Bug's Life, and so then you have this, but it still has some of that sensibility. They're still in hiding. They still have to pretend, but it's also about acceptance.
Yeah. And I think it's about like growing older and not. So I think a lot of movies about growing older, like you just have to give up what you liked as a kid or like what you liked when you're younger. And this movie is about like, you don't have to give up being Mr. Incredible. You can share what you enjoy with your family, but you just have to change. And I think that was the thing. Mr. Incredible, once he learns that his whole family can be heroes with him, and he becomes a better hero, and they become a really amazing unit by coming together as a family. And so, and so a lot of movies about a family coming together, I kind of roll my eyes because most families don't come together; they just keep fighting. I feel like most families would have died on that island. Like, I'm not brother, like they just would have like had the big fight in the factory, and Synergy would have killed them all. But this movie, like, I really felt like the family. What's exciting about this movie is the family comes together and it feels natural, and it feels like it's believable the way they work out their problems during the action, which a lot of movies it doesn't. It feels very forced.
Yeah, and I think that they give them all, depth. They all
Hmm.
have like they all feel like people. That's the Pixar touch.
Yeah.
Another thing that Pixar, really does well that I just think that this is more unique to them than a lot of the Disney,
Hmm.
your bigger Disney films, um, is they cast the people that are best for the role.
Hmm.
They don't care about like necessarily stars. I mean think about it's like because you have like Craig T. Nelson, so you got Coach
Yeah.
as your lead actor,
Yeah.
and he hasn't, he's just look, he's great, love him in Action Jackson, but he's not a Brad Pitt like
No.
in terms of attractiveness, yes, but just not in terms of box office. Then you got Holly Hunter, who's like a fantastic actress, but has this like very specific
Hmm.
voice.
Hmm.
They Sarah Vowell, who was just like an NPR, the woman who voices Violet, just she was like on This American Life and stuff like that.
Yeah, she's a radio person. Yeah.
Yeah, so that like Brad Bird or someone in casting like heard that voice and was like this. It just doesn't sound like anything else. There's not this. When you look at like some of the DreamWorks stuff, and it's all about like look who we can book.
Hmm. Yes.
This is like
Shark
who
Tale was
is
big for that. Shark Tale was big.
100%, and
Yeah.
this is like, yeah, and you look at Shark Tale versus Finding Nemo, and Finding Nemo is Albert Brooks,
Yeah.
and the kids don't know who Albert Brooks is when they see Finding Nemo, but he is phenomenal in that role of Marlin. They revitalized Ellen DeGeneres.
Hmm.
You
Well, I
know,
think the big. I think this is Jeffrey Katzberg because he went to DreamWorks. The mistake that DreamWorks made was they thought the stars are going to get kids into the movies, which is why they went Woody Allen's in Ants and we got Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy in Shrek, although that worked. But the Shrek, but I think it's the designs more so the voices that kids want to see.
and the
Even
story.
in the story, yes, but in Aladdin, if the genie design was ass, I don't think people would have gave a shit that even Robin Williams was killing it in the role if they didn't find that character is visually very appealing.
Well, and I think that Robin Williams, like as the genie, became this shift, and
Mm-hmm.
they over relied on that and star power too much because you look at like, and I'm sure you've talked about a lot of these movies, but you looked at like Little Mermaid and Beauty
Mm-hmm.
and the Beast, and it's a lot of Broadway people. It's
Yeah,
not big names, and it's people who can sing and these, and they have a lot of character, but like who's the one? Pat Carroll in Little Mermaid, the voice of Ursula. She just
okay.
has like that's like the right way to do it to
Mm-hmm.
me. And I don't care that that's not someone more famous. It's like that woman is Ursula, and
Yeah.
that's what Ursula sounds like. And and then I think Robin Williams. I think some people bought tickets because of that. Because then I remember when The Lion King came out, you would see like in the recording studio, they would start showing that level of like in the
Well,
previews,
I
like
remember the first thing, and no one talks about this. But the first thing they said in the trailers for Lion King was Elton John. Elton John. They like beat into your head Elton
yeah,
John before they tell you what's in the movie or like what the animals look like or anything. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. And before you had Elton John, you had like was it Alan Menken and Howard
Hmm.
Ashman?
Yeah, which those guys were fantastic. Those guys were amazing.
Yeah, and it's like I didn't need to know like what else they did, and I know they did other great things, and I know Ashman passed away
Hmm.
early, but like it's just they were the best for the job. And look, some of those Lion King songs are fantastic, but yeah, pushing the names, and that's I think you look at 2004, and they were just really doing that, like you said, Shark Tale, Shrek, like
Hmm.
a lot of stuff. So that's one of the things that sticks out to me about this movie.
Yeah,
Like Jason Lee isn't. I wouldn't say he's like one of my favorite actors. He's great as Syndrome.
he's amazing as Syndrome. I mean, I loved him in the Kevin Smith movies back when I was a kind of feel like Kevin Smith has fallen off, but I mean, back then he was still on point, or post to pre 2004. But I love him in the Mallrats. He's great, and he's also great in Chasing Amy. I thought he was very good in that movie. But he's amazing as Synergy. Synergy is
The
such a good
Syndrome.
Syndrome. Fuck. Sorry.
You said synergy a couple times, and
I know.
I only want to correct you so many times because I want to.
No, you feel free to correct me because sometimes, like,
Yeah.
I mess up names. But
Syndrome.
Syndrome.
I partially said it because it's a great name.
What? Synergy or Syndrome?
Syndrome.
Syndrome. Well, Synergy would be a good name for a villain. He could be an agent, and you'll be like, you know what? If you just do your podcast with your stand-up, it's a lot of synergy because that's always used by the industry. That's why I feel that word has evil to it. I heard a lot of douchebags talk about it. Syndrome. Oh, let me just kill this. Sorry. Syndrome is an amazing villain because he's just such a motherfucker, and they don't have villains. Villains are bad in Disney films, even in Pixar films, but they never go this. They never go to this level where they're just, ready and willing to kill children and stuff.
Well, what's interesting about
Mm-hmm.
the Jack scene at the end, it's like it's more evil. Like he's not going.
He's just gonna take the he's gonna raise the kid. Yeah, to hate.
Yeah,
hate.
he's gonna raise the kid to hate his parents. Like
Yeah.
that's a real dark.
Yeah. That's really dark, and he just the fact how ruthless that character is, I think, really works. Is I don't know if you've noticed by watching the not Coco, but everything after Coco. I don't know if you noticed, but Disney films don't really have villains anymore. Frozen 2 didn't have a villain. Onward didn't have a villain.
Moana didn't.
Yeah, they've kind of moved away from villains, and I kind of feel like that's like an edict from someone up top to be like, we don't want kids to see villains anymore. But I feel like villains can teach you more than the heroes can, because there are people in the world that are out there to fucking kill you. I mean, there's people out in the world right now that don't want to wear masks, don't care if you die or your family dies.
Yeah.
So, like, these people are out there, and I think it's better for kids to learn about villains in movies like Incredibles and Little Mermaid than it is to, like, just go into school and get smacked in the face by one,
Well, what I would say, and because I think that this is a big thing, big problem within the MCU,
Mm-hmm.
In some ways in the last Star Wars movie, so it feels like an overarching Disney edict is franchise, where the villains don't matter. Like, I love Infinity War, like you said, there was one last time we saw each other. Like, it's probably my favorite MCU movie. I'm not a fan of Endgame, and one of the reasons I'm not a fan of Endgame is I think that Thanos is such a jabroni. They completely undo all the interesting stuff about
I thought
him.
chopping his head off at the beginning, I would have had that version of Thanos chase them through time or something.
I didn't even, you know what? I didn't even mind that because Thor's angry and he used it and all that. But when at the end, he doesn't kill one person. Like you watch that, use a wrestling term. The end fight is a 30-minute squash match.
Yeah.
Like, Iron Man does not get killed by Thanos. Iron Man DQs himself. Like,
yeah. Same thing with Black
Thanos
Widow.
Doesn't get to kill anyone.
No, same thing with Black Widow.
Black Widow also.
Yeah.
Sacrifices herself. Yeah.
It's
Captain
almost
America
like
sacrifices himself.
It's almost like the WWE formula of heels, where the heel would show up, beat the crap out of Hogan or beat the crap out of the Undertaker, and they announce like, how is the Undertaker ever going to beat this guy? And then get to the big match at WrestleMania or SummerSlam, and Hogan and Undertaker just easily destroys the guy, and the guy runs away crying, and then the next week he's dancing with Viscera on Heat. So
yeah.
I
just think that it's like the villain thing. They think that what's going to really sell. What can we really market? So you look at like a movie like Moana, and they have the crab as like a secondary villain, but like the main villain, this big lava monster, was really just a misguided spirit. It's always this confusing thing. Yeah. And like you said, Coco, like that villain was amazing. That villain does that villain make that movie? No, but it makes the movie better.
Yeah, he does, because there's stakes and then there's something to lose. And, you want to have this thrill of, and I think that's what Onward was missing. I think if Onward had someone trying to prevent them from getting their dad to, instead of just some dragon, I think Onward would have been a far better film. Did you like Onward?
I did. Okay. I liked it a lot.
Okay.
I really, the end really got to me. And what I did like about it, I will say, what I was a big fan of was I liked that they didn't cheat. I liked that the guy the one brother gave up his time for the other brother,
That
and
I
he
did like,
didn't
yeah.
get to see him. To me, that's the difference between Pixar and Disney.
Yeah, that I did like. Yeah, that was a beautiful moment, and I did like the connection between the brothers. I just wanted something out there chasing them or something. I don't know. I just
I
missed the
gotcha.
villains. Yeah, I just missed the
But
villains.
the other issue is when you do that, sometimes it does feel tacked on. It's
Hmm.
got because it's got to be done well. I mean,
Yeah.
there are Marvel movies where it's like, okay,
Well,
they
Captain
just
Marvel's a perfect example.
yeah, and they just put the villains in there. And I mean, Captain Marvel is like she just becomes Popeye.
Yeah.
But the problem is there's no compelling Bluto.
Yeah. Exactly. That Jude Law scene where she just punches him and that's it, and it's just like, well, why was I worried about her catching or this guy catching her this whole time? Like, why was I even worried about this? You know? Did you like Captain Marvel? I really don't like it. I'm curious what you thought.
It was, I think that they have the big movies and then they have the smaller movies.
Hmm.
Like Doctor Strange is like a smaller one. Ant-Man, pun intended.
Yeah.
And Ant-Man and the Wasp. They do these like filler movies, and that's definitely what some of them feel like. And Captain Marvel, like it's like the difference between like reading a big arc and reading an annual.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It's
yeah.
just it's interesting because me and my wife have been rewatching the Marvel movies, and I think Fury says in Winter Soldier, like the last time I trusted someone, I had both eyes or whatever.
Hmm.
And then it's like, but he ends up losing it because of a cat, and it's like a comedy scene. And I get that, but it's like, but what about that? This doesn't
Yeah.
connect.
I think when Nick Fury lost the eye in like World War II, that was like a really dramatic story. Like that's a dramatic thing, and you just see that the cat, and it just I don't know. It
It's a
was just
fun gag, but it's like,
yeah.
is it worth, like,
And also, I feel like a guy like Fury wouldn't have said that seriously. He just would have said to him, yeah, this cat took out my eye. It's fucking weird. I don't know. Like, I feel like Fury would
yeah.
be more open about it rather than do this ominous, like, foreshadow of his past. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, and that's, I mean, that's just comic books in general, is
Hmm.
that the people that wrote Winter Soldier figured, oh, if they ever do reveal it, it will be serious. And then the people that wrote Captain Marvel are like, the leaned on '90s references. Yeah, I mean, that she literally fights people to just a girl. Like, it's like, okay, I get it, but
Hmm.
because I like the character, I like Carol Danvers a lot, and I thought Brie Larson did a good job. It's just, yeah, the scrolls as like a refugee metaphor, I just wasn't feeling, only because, and the main reason I say that is, okay, so they're actually sympathetic, but you didn't make the Kree that cool. They
Hmm.
kind of look like chumps. And then you took the other badass alien race in the scrolls and they're chumpy. So now you don't have, you just took off a lot of cool villains from the table.
Yeah, and then when the Shi'ar show up, they're kind of like chumpy too. They're kind of like the X-Men's bitches, the Shi'ar. So unless they make the Shi'ar like the main space villains, they ever get
Yeah.
around to them. The other thing too, I think the reason why they didn't make the Skrulls bad guys because then there's so like because then people just constantly have a theory like, oh, Captain America acted like this because he's a Skrull, or this happened because that guy's a Skrull, and people keep waiting for Secret Invasion. And I think the reason they made Skrulls good was, all right, now there's no Secret Invasion because they're our allies. So, you know, I think that might have been one of the reasons.
But I think, because it seems similar to me to the, Iron Man 3
Mm,
Mandarin fake out. But the problem is, in any form of entertainment, in wrestling, in comedy, if you have a cancellation, you have to replace it with something of equal or lesser value. It's
yes.
like, okay, so if you show me Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin, and he's doing these cool videos. You'll never see it coming, and he's this badass, and you're like really excited to see Iron Man fight him. And you replace him with fire-breathing Guy Pearce, who's upset that he got stood up on a New Year's Eve expo. It's like it's just I can't care. I cannot
No,
care.
no. That
And
was
so
a
that's the
huge mistake.
thing where it's like, okay, so you replace the, Ben Mendelsohn, who's always great as a villain, and he's a scroll, and the scrolls are cool, but now it's just Jude Law guy who was in every movie in 2004 that wasn't The Incredibles.
Yeah, and every movie that also bombed. Yeah, that's the other thing. I think sometimes these writers of the movies they get a little bit too cute, and they're like, "Well, what if Wolverine?" Like, this is just an example. Like, they're saying, "What if Wolverine's the weakest X-Men and gets killed 3 minutes into the new X-Men movie?" And it's like, "Oh, that's a cute idea." But the reason why people like Wolverine, or the reason why people want to see the Mandarin, is they actually like the Mandarin, or they like Wolverine. Like, you can do these. Sometimes I think these writers, when they adopt the source material, they try to get a little bit too cute, and it's like, no, we actually just want to see things play out the way it's supposed to play out. We want to see
and
the
it's like,
Mandarin fight Iron Man. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to kill off Wolverine, fine, but you have to give me someone as interesting and compelling. And it's like, oh, we'd never spent any of our other movies doing that because we focused on Wolverine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like that would be the idea, and then they would just proceed as normal. They would just be like, "Hey, isn't it enough? We kill Wolverine in 3 minutes. Isn't that shocking and crazy?" And it's like, no, actually, I want to see Wolverine and the rest.
Like, you didn't see that coming, yeah, because I'm not a bad writer.
I
know. Yeah. I mean, we're literally talking about Vince Russo here. We're talking about swerves.
But I feel like Game of Thrones, people took the wrong lessons from the Red Wedding. That's my big thing, I think, because the Red Wedding, if you watch I binged the show, and it does lead to stuff. It just takes a while. It does lead to a payback. It's basically the NWO beatdown, and I'm gonna say her name wrong again. The girl who played Wolfsbane. What was her name on the show? Not Sansa.
Oh, Maisie Williams.
Maisie Williams, yeah.
Oh, what was her name on the show? Arya.
Arya, yeah. And Arya's, Sting, and she eventually does get revenge. There is a payoff. But I think people, when they saw that episode, just assume, well, that's the payoff. There's no payoff. And I think they took a lot of the wrong lessons from that, where you see in Walking Dead, they kill off Carl for no reason. Or there's a couple other shows where they just change things for no reason. And it's like, no, dude, like, you took the wrong lessons from the Red Wedding. I love the Red Wedding, but I think it's one of the worst things to happen to long-form storytelling, I think, personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's just all in how it's done, and the shock can't be the thing, because then you're just shit. You're trying to repeat that, and you're trying to repeat that.
Yeah, which I feel like Walking Dead does a lot.
And you burn out your audience, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, you didn't expect us to kill Carl, and it's like, well, the main character is kind of doing all this shit for his son to have a better life. If the kid's dead, why the fuck are these people doing it? You know what I mean? Why did I invest?
Yeah, and that's why I think that, like, sometimes people will say something that's like predictable. It's like, but if it's earned, then I don't care. Like, that end scene in Coco when he's singing the fucking song with the grandma, it's like, did I think that there was a possibility of something like that happening once you say that she's the daughter and she's the key to remembering? Yes. Did it knock me off the fucking floor? Yes.
Yeah.
Because it was earned, it was, you made me want to see it.
Yeah. Just like, in the Incredibles movie, a soldier could shoot Dash in the head, and, oh, my son's dead. And then you keep moving. And, oh, wow, no, who would have thought they would do that in a Disney movie? But that's a horrible thing to do. Nobody wants to see that, going back to The Incredibles.
It was interesting because I just read the Amazing Spider-Man 121 and 122, which is, Gwen Stacy's death. And, and that was such an unprecedented thing at the time. That's like 1973.
Yeah.
You do not see that coming. And it's interesting because, then they try to do versions of that over and over again. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, that was such a great moment. I do think that I wanted a point to make about that moment. That is such a pivotal moment, I think, in comic books. I'm glad they never undid it. I'm glad, I still feel like we're only a year or two away from them undoing that, by the way, where Gwen's like, I didn't die. I was a soldier working for, the CIA or some shit. But
you remember the big twist that was in the John Michael Straczynski run, the Sins Past?
Oh, that she had kids. Yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah, that he was killing her because he impregnated her. Ugh.
Are you reading?
You didn't see that coming. I'm like, I didn't want to.
Are you reading the new issues with Nick Spencer?
I am.
I'm really happy, and I really hope they stick the landing. I'm really happy they're undoing One More Day, because I hated that storyline. The one that Are you
Yeah,
all caught up?
I don't think I've heard the last two. I
Mhm.
found out who Kindred was,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm about. And yeah, I mean, my thing is with One More Day is that yeah, it's just cheap. It's like if you want them to divorce, then let them divorce and let
Hmm.
us feel the pain of that, and that could be well done. But don't have this bullshit. Like if I can read something and see how much the writer had to think about it, that's not good.
Yeah, no. I'd rather Spider-Man decide he's in love with another woman than make a deal with the devil. Like, like that to me is like Spider making a deal with the devil. He would never have done that. And the fact that they did it and they stuck with it this many years, it kind of like always. I kind of couldn't enjoy the book that much, and I'm happy that they're gonna do this because then I'll enjoy the book. It's just like it was so annoying. One more day. It's probably the most hated comic book storyline I ever read.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I gotta go Clone Saga there because
Okay. Well, I like Ben Riley. I have a soft spot for that character.
just how long it was. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
it made me stop reading Spider-Man. And the thing is, like, One More Day sucks, but I like a lot of Brand New Day.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, but I mean, there's like 3 years of Spider-Man that like, and I tried reading the whole Clone Saga, and I got maybe like a half a year in. It's just bad.
It does get horrendously convoluted. Like I mean, and Spider-Man was such an
Quickly.
unconvoluted character, and the way they convolute him in about like 6 issues, it's like it's almost impressive, you know?
Yeah.
Because X-Men were convoluted books. You read Spider-Man and be like, all right, Spider-Man fights Mysterio, goes home. Who's he dating? Who's he feuding with in his personal life? Okay, great. Next issue. And you could kind of jump into Spider-Man at any given time, and you know where you are. And the Clone Saga was like, what the fuck is going on?
And he's the hero that you can relate to. Oh, I
Yeah.
can't pay bills. Oh, I have to, I feel
Hmm.
guilt,
Yeah.
you know.
I want to go back to the Incredibles real quick. I have a point
Yeah,
I
of
wanted to
course.
make with you, and I want to see if you agree with me on this. I also feel Incredibles is the best DC Comics movie ever made, not based on DC Comics. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of the spirit of the Silver Age and the classic DC era, and the innocence that DC has in terms of the heroes that you don't really see in any DC films ever, for that matter.
Well, I think it's interesting. I
Hmm.
One of the reasons I would agree with you is because it does go into Watchmen territory,
Hmm.
but then it comes back from that.
Yeah,
I
into a
mean,
more
literally
happy,
the
cheery way. Yeah.
yeah, because the cape gags, the cape getting stuck in the revolving door and all that, that's from Watchmen.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Hmm.
In one of the text pieces, I think, and I think the heroes being outlawed and all of that. It's
But
very
there's also like a
much
wholesomeness to these characters that
yeah.
Marvel's characters. I would never have said they were wholesome. I kind of feel like they were almost like made in this because people forget the Marvel characters are very different from DC characters. The way they had personal conflict stuff. I feel like the Marvel characters are almost like an angry response to DC characters, the way they were all perfect and got along and had a wholesomeness to them.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting because I'm a big Fantastic Four fan,
mhm,
and they broke that formula, but
mhm.
then they became boring because they were seen as wholesome, because
Yeah,
everything else got so much more grimy.
yeah. I implore anyone read Superman comic books from 1960, and then go read Fantastic Four, and it's literally like reading the punk rock version of the Superman comics you just read.
Yeah, I can't read a lot of Silver Age DC. I
Oh,
mean,
it's
where
so
it's
bad.
just
It's so
it's
bad.
so bad, and then it's also it's like, but I can still because here's the thing, there's a goofiness
Hmm.
to a lot of early Fantastic Four, but it just works for me. I mean, some of that is they did have the best artists at the time,
Hmm.
but it's like the first appearance of the Scrolls,
Hmm.
right? The way that Reed beats the Scrolls is the goofiest
Oh,
thing.
he turns them into cows. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
But before he does that, he shows them pictures of monster comic books that Kirby had done, the Fing Fang Fooms and stuff, and he's like, this is what Earth is. Everyone is like this on Earth. You don't want to come here. these monsters will kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they don't come. And then he he hypnotizes the scrolls that never went back to the homeworld to become cows.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 And then I don't know if you remember in Skull Kill Crew, those
Yes, they
cows were made
become
into
hamburger
burgers.
and yeah.
People get it. Yeah. So I that was a fun thing. Yeah, but the thing with DC is even though like I'm not a huge fan of those early books, I like those characters because they're wholesome. There's a purity to them, and I kind of feel like Incredibles has that same purity and wholesomeness. Incredibles doesn't just remind me of Fantastic Four. It reminds me of Geffen and DeMatteis's Justice League International. It also reminds me of Challengers of the Unknown. It also kind of has like a little Johnny Quest in there. There's a lot of wholesome characters, modern, that I feel like Incredibles took an inspiration from. And my thing with DC now is that you're taking these wholesome, pure characters, and you're trying to they break them with these new movies. I feel like when you have Zack Snyder doing what he's doing, or even like the Joker movie, you're breaking these characters because they were not meant to go in this direction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's because a lot of what's in the Incredibles, I can tell you like where I saw it first and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like there was this I'm trying to look this band story from the late 90s. It was so it was this Elseworlds 80-page giant, and they had a story where the babysitter put Superman in a microwave.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It got recalled. It got recalled right away.
It got recalled and
Mm-hmm.
canceled and stuff, and it's like, and then you look at the Jack thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not that different.
Yeah, no, it's not different at all. Yeah, and there's also like you said, spy inspirations, and I think they took a big inspiration from the Golden Age. That was the book where the Justice Society gets outlawed, and it turns out the guy I read this years ago, but the guy who gets them outlawed, who framed them for stuff they didn't do, was the sidekick who was kind of miserable and pissed off. And so again, they take that from the movies. The other thing about The Incredibles is I want to talk about two of the darkest. I thought it was the darkest scene in the movie is when Mr. Incredible's trapped. He grabs the woman, the femme fatale, and he goes, "I'm gonna pop her like a grape." And Syndrome was like, "Go right ahead." And then he thinks his wife and kid dies, and we have to watch this reaction of this cartoon character, realizing my wife and kid were just murdered, and he kind of just gives up. And I just felt like, wow, that's an incredibly dark scene, but it works so well. Just both things, like he's pushed the bar. I'm going to murder this woman. He doesn't do it because he's a hero. And that's like darkness done right. Whereas Superman probably would have, if Zack Snyder wrote the movie, Mr. Incredible would have popped the woman's head off, raped Syndrome's corpse, and then flew home to Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that I really feel like they keep the heart of these characters.
Yes.
Like even when they are dark,
Mhm.
there is a goodness in them, and
Yes.
that and I think that's ultimately
I want to say this: you can go dark with superheroes as long as you remain true to the character.
yeah.
You can put them in dark situations, and I feel like a lot of times with these DC films, they don't do that.
Yeah, and I would say, you were saying like there's a lot of 60s DC. The reason I would say there's a lot of 60s, I think a lot of people make the Fantastic Four comparison because of the specific abilities, right?
The family thing too, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
yes, the abilities. Yes, the abilities. Yes, right.
Yeah. And and it's like, Jack basically like Franklin Richards, like the baby's the most powerful one.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think that the other thing is that there is always they do mix the macro and the micro.
Mm-hmm.
So there are these like big overarching stories, but there is the humanity and the family, because it's like you never really saw like a lot of DC characters in the 60s have to get jobs. They just were already employed. But like seeing Mr. Incredible have to get a job and like how that breaks him, that's Marvel to me.
Yeah. Well, I actually read one of the best scenes ever. They would never do this nowadays, but there is a scene in a Justice League comic book in the 60s where they're confronted with a problem. And Batman actually says, I don't know. I'm just like some wealthy guy when I'm not Batman. I don't really know about this stuff. Why don't we ask the Flash? He's a crime science. He's a scientist. And the Flash is like, oh yeah, I know how to fix this. And I'm like, wow, that's an amazing scene because Batman wouldn't know that. Flash would, but they would never write that now. They would have the Flash stand there and be like, who? I don't know. And Batman would be like,
Batman knows everything.
yeah, Batman knows everything. Yeah. So I thought that was a great scene because Batman's like, I don't know. How would I know how to do this? Like, and they go to the Flash. I thought that was awesome. The other thing I wanted to bring up to you about The Incredibles, which I don't want to talk to you about. Do you think Brad Bird should direct Fantastic Four?
I don't think he would want to because it's less like would I like to? Yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, do I think he would want to? I don't think he would because I think he would probably say, I already did my version. And, when you get to have these characters you created on your own and you make it work, you get to tell deeper stories sometimes and you don't have to deal with people like us. You don't have to deal with the expectations and what if you did this and that. It's like, hey, I got to tell a better version of it,
Yeah. I kind of do think if they do make a Fantastic Four movie, I don't want to see the origin. I kind of feel now, especially if they're going to put them in the MCU with so many things different. You don't have an Iron Man anymore. Sadly, we don't have T'Challa anymore. I hope they don't recast them. I hope they just move on. You don't have a lot of characters that Reed Richards and these other characters can relate to. I kind of feel like they should do almost an out of time thing where the family was famous years before, and now it's kind of like grown apart, and they have to come back together as a family to fight something. I kind of feel like I don't know. I don't want to see the origin again. I don't want to see them in outer space. I don't want to see them discovering their powers. I want to see them like they already were the Fantastic Four. Something ended it, or they got lost somewhere. Maybe you could say they were in the negative zone, and now they have to figure out how to now as older people bring the team back together.
Yeah, I mean, I agree of not wanting to see the origin where it's like because you look at it's another thing to think about with the Incredibles. We don't know how they got their powers.
No, yeah, I have no idea how Mr. Incredible got the power. And he's almost not even important.
I don't care.
I don't give a shit. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, but like the Incredibles still is an origin story because it's about
the family
coming origin together. Of the family. Yeah.
That's kind of what I kind of want Fantastic Four to be about a family coming together rather than a bunch of people, find out they have powers,
Yeah, I think there's a way to do it. I mean, the way that I would do it is, and I know that this is essentially Captain America as well, but I think that they're just so quintessentially 60s and having them come forward in time, the Austin Powers, I wouldn't say freeze them, but
I would say they were in the negative zone finding analysts, and then they got out of the negative zone 2020. I don't know, 2025 at this rate with the way this pandemic's going. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have, they've been lost in time or whatever. And, even if Dr. Doom is older and he hasn't, or, he was lost with them or something, but it's also, I really do think if they're smart, I mean, we do love Doom and there's nothing I want to see more than a great version of him on screen, but maybe you build up to him.
Yeah, I agree.
They always lead with him, and then it's like you got nowhere to go.
Well, I know the Russos want to do Secret Wars, and I would build everything towards a Secret Wars film where Doom is the head villain.
Yeah.
I know they said they want to do that. The original, not the sequel, which I read. I recently read Secret Wars 2, and wow, is that something. I can't believe they put that out. Did you ever read Secret Wars 2?
Yes. Where Spider-Man teaches Beyonder how to go to the bathroom.
Yes, and Beyonder learns about money and relationships. I'm like, I can't believe they thought this was an appropriate sequel to Secret Wars 1. Like, holy fucking shit. It is bizarre. Well,
the first one just existed to sell toys. And I think the second one just existed to give Jim Shooter a hard-on.
Yeah, he bangs Dazzler, and Dazzler's in love with him. There's a lot of weird things in the book.
Yeah, because it's pretty amazing, the story of it that, they just asked kids what their two favorite words were, and they said secret and wars, and that's why it's called that.
Well, I'll never forget. I read an article where they go like, "We're gonna do Secret Wars 2," and the executive like, "Wasn't Secret Wars 1 horrible?" Yeah, but look at the sales numbers, and they're like, "All right, Secret Wars 2, let's do it." You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one is pretty bad, but I gotta give credit to Claremont. He took a lot of things that came out of Secret Wars 1, he ran with it, like Magneto being, part of the X-Men and Colossus falling out of love with Kitty Pryde. He did do a lot with what they gave him. He made chicken salad and chicken shit.
I like the first one. It's fun.
Mhm.
There's some big moments. It's you really have to read it in the context of
The
when it
time,
came
yes.
out, and
Hmm.
there wasn't that kind of synergy so much.
Hmm.
But I
No.
mean, it's pretty amazing. Like the whole lifting up a mountain range.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, what about shit? I had a great moment and I forgot. Oh, what about Magneto just fucking the Wasp?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
Spider-Man beating up all the X-Men.
Yes, Spider-Man beating up the X-Men. Yeah, there was all these like cool little moments, and Doctor Doom finally getting his face normal. I also like the Volcano and Molecule Man. I always like that love story in there.
And then Titanium absorbing Man. Yeah,
That was good.
I'm a really big Wrecking Crew fan. They're like one of my
Okay,
favorites.
all right.
And so anything they're in, I'm on board for, and they're in it.
You know what I'm a big fan of? I'm a big fan of the shitty '90s characters like Ben Riley, and they just put out a Thunderstrike figure. Remember him? He was like a
I have
'90s
them.
store.
I will show you my Thunderstrike figure.
Oh, okay. I'll show you mine because
Oh, you got it too?
I got it. Yeah, it was only on sale for $19 on Amazon. I couldn't hit buy now fast enough.
Oh man, yeah. I will say the best figure in that line
Hmm.
is Kang.
Oh yes, that is wow. That is I gotta get that. That's only $19. It's pretty
Yeah,
cheap.
he's worth it. I think he's like him and Doom are figure of the year. They're both pretty great.
Did you see they have it really cheap? The Old Man Logan, Old Man Hawkeye 2-pack.
I had a friend get it for me. Yeah, I have it.
Isn't that those figures are great too? And I also I'm not a big fan of movie characters, but I love the movie Venom. I didn't like the movie, but the movie Venom Marvel Legends. Have you seen that?
I did. Yeah, I feel like and I get a lot of the figures, but I feel like if I get movie Venom, it's me admitting I did like the movie, and I can't do that.
What did you think of that movie? Did you like?
It
I
was,
kind of.
it was a throwback. It. I mean, since we were talking about this before, it feels like a movie that came out before The Incredibles.
It
It
did,
feels
yes.
like a 2003 movie.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah,
nothing modern about it at all.
no, even like Tom Hardy's performance is hamming it up. Like he has no respect for like. It almost feels like this is not the same guy who did Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I always say like I wish that I could watch the movie that he thinks he's in
Yeah,
because that one's probably great.
he thinks he's
Not
he
the one
thinks
I
he's in
saw.
he thinks he's in some comedy or something. He's all over the place in that one.
Yeah, he's having
Um,
fun.
Now, what did you think of Incredibles 2? I'm actually thinking about doing that episode with Scott Chaplin, but what did you think of it when you saw it?
Oh, Scott's great. I liked it. I didn't love it. You
Do you think
know,
they
I,
waited too long? I kind of feel like they waited a little bit too long.
yeah, in some ways,
Hmm.
I do only because, well, like we said, like how much this moved things forward.
Hmm.
But then, to me, it's not even the difference that it took 14 years for it to come out. It's what has changed in 14
Yes,
years.
yes, exactly.
And so the first one feels like this revelation and it's this breath of fresh air. But the second one feels a little just stale.
It feels like he Brad Bird, speaking, didn't watch the new superhero movies. He didn't watch things like it. Well, he couldn't have seen Into the Spider Verse at that point, but he didn't see all these movies that really pushed the genre forward. And he's kind of still stuck in 2004, and he's kind of still stuck being inspired by the older comics and the older films.
Yeah, and I just didn't like the villains as much. I thought the reveal was very obvious. I
Hmm.
felt like I like Elastigirl, but I just think the amount of time that they just gave her to herself, it just, like I said, it felt more like a spy stuff than superhero stuff.
I also felt like the amount of time they spent on Elastigirl was almost like fan servicey because she's pretty big on the creepy cartoon message boards and stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like they were appealing towards those people more. When I saw the second movie, I was like, there's like 97 shots of Elastigirl's ass in this movie, where in the first movie there was like 2. You know?
Yeah, they're literally stretching this out.
Yeah.
I will say the Jack and raccoon scene is really great, and
That is a great scene.
it reminds me of that classic like Warner Brothers. It's just really fun animation. And have you seen the thing that came out? I think on the DVD of this movie, Jack's Attack, the thing I mentioned.
Yes, I remember. I watched that. That's why I watched the DVD when it first came out. I'm like, oh my god, a second movie! I didn't realize how short it was going to be. But yes, I love Jack's Attack. That was a great way to sell the DVDs. I wish they still did stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's a fun little story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that DVD is like, you basically got to put a week aside to watch everything on the Incredibles DVD, the first one that came out back in the day.
They used to stuff the heck out of those things.
And Brad Bird likes to talk. I'll tell you that much. He likes. you get it. You ask him, hey, what? Give me some thoughts on making the Incredibles. You're sitting there for 17 hours.
Yeah.
Until you get a word in. Christmas Day, what are you gonna watch first, Soul or Wonder Woman 84?
I'm definitely watching both.
Me too. Yeah.
I think it's got to be Wonder Woman 84 for me. Only, and I think Soul might be the better film, but I feel like what I've missed more this year is seeing comic book movies in the theater. And and I think that I'm really excited about both, though. Like, it does feel like Christmas knowing that they're both coming. Like, it makes me really excited.
I don't even need any presents. I just want to see those 2 movies. And I do think I think Soul's going to be like the best picture of the year. I don't know. I have a really good feeling about Soul. I have a feeling
I do too. It's Pete Docter. I mean, I think he's the best guy they got. Sorry, go on.
I think, like, because we're both we're both artists, and I think the story of, like, right before this guy gets his big break, he dies and he fights to get back to, like, achieve his dream. I think that's going to resonate. I know just watching the trailer resonated deeply with me, and I feel like it's going to resonate deeply with you as well. Maybe I don't know.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like I said, it's Pete Docter. I mean, Up and Inside Out are 2 of my favorites, and so I mean, that's the thing. Pixar is one of those few studios where I pretty much will give anything a chance. Like, I accept, like, the Cars movies are the Cars movies, and they help keep the lights on, and like. The thing I know about them is that they don't even do the best box office wise. They just do the best merch wise.
Yeah.
And so the way I look at them is like kind of necessary, where, okay, if they're focusing a lot of their merchandising on this, then they can do a story about like an old man who lost his wife in a floating house, which is Up is my favorite. It might be it's like my top 3 favorite movies ever, but it's definitely my favorite Disney, Pixar, whatever.
Coco is my favorite Pixar film.
It's pretty fantastic too. I wouldn't argue with that.
My dad, I didn't see it until this summer because my dad died. My dad was dying when it came out. He's from Mexico, and then we buried him in Mexico City last October. And I found out, this is the crazy thing, I'll tell you. I found out my real grandfather. I didn't know my father had a different father than his brothers. My real grandfather was gunned down in the streets. Because him and his friends were attempting a robbery, and they turned on him and shot him. And so when I saw Coco, and the grandfather, they all think the grandfather's in it because they told me your real grandfather was a piece of shit. He was an asshole, right? That's why your dad never told you had a different grandfather than us. When I saw Coco and the grandfather's actually a good guy, and I saw Mexico City, and I don't think I've ever cried more during a movie than that movie. I was crying the whole entire film. Because my dad died around the time that film came out. So, like, it was very intense.
No, and that's a strong connection. And it's interesting because I saw it in theaters opening weekend. And so, the Frozen short is the way that I it's so bad.
I spent 2 years terrified to watch the movie because I knew I was going to cry like that. And when I watched it, I was crying, but I was like, this is one of the greatest animated films I've ever seen.
It's really, yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, it's great. And I mean, that's the thing, like, with Incredibles 2, like I did really enjoy Incredibles 2, but Bow, the short that was before it, oh man, that was fantastic.
Yes, I think I saw. What was that short? Was it about the
It was
Indian
like the
kid?
little dumpling that comes to life.
Oh, okay. What movie had the Indian kid imagine himself as a superhero? Was that Onward?
Oh, Super Team, Sanjay Super Team.
Yes.
I think that might have been Finding Dory.
No, you're right. You're right about that. Yes. Sanjay, because I remember that one. I really liked it.
Or was it? Or was it?
Oh, Good Dinosaur. Good Dinosaur.
Okay, I never saw Good Dinosaur.
Oh, you did it?
No,
You're not missing much. You're not
that's what I
missing.
hear. That's what I hear.
You're not missing much. It's probably, I would say it's weaker than Cars 2.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very good. The concept is great, but I don't. There's something missing. There's just something missing. You know?
Just isn't that Pixar oomph?
Yeah, it's a very touching story. There's a lot of touching scenes. It has a whole like quest, family, but there's just but you know what? It's not if you're not doing anything Thanksgiving night, it's not a bad way. I always like watching these movies around the holidays.
Yeah.
It's not a bad way to kill a Thanksgiving night if you want to watch it this week. So
Yeah.
yeah. Mike, where can people find you on social media?
I am on Instagram at Mike Lawrence Comedy.
Okay. Do you still do Twitter or you left?
Nope.
Okay. Does your life so much better without Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay. I hate Twitter.
I had to do it, and Facebook. I got rid of both.
Okay. Yeah. I still have Facebook, but I have Twitter, and I really do need to get rid of it because all it does is just every 2 seconds just doom and gloom. You know?
It's negative energy. It's conflict for the sake of conflict, and yeah, it just causes me stress. It was really not good for my mental health.
Everyone's always fighting, and yeah, you're probably right about that. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, whether if you're a fan of Mike or a fan of The Incredibles, I have done every episode in season 1, every Disney film from Snow White to Frozen 2. Right now we're in season 2. We started with Toy Story. We're going right to Soul. And next week we're going to be doing Cars with Jeff Paul, who saw it in theaters with his kids. So he has a lot to talk about.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Follow us on Twitter. And well, okay, I just said fuck Twitter, but follow us on Twitter. Gootz's Disney Pod. And also subscribe on iTunes, Gootz's Disney Pod. And follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I don't write a lot on Twitter, but follow me anyway. Ray Gootz. Mike, thank you so much for being on the show.